All right, Shalom. First, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem Yahweh Shai, Bahashem Racha Kodash. Double honors to the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. Back again with another article. All right, this one on says here the U.S. suspends nuclear arms control treaty with Russia. All right, it says Secretary of State Mike Pompeo announcing Friday that a treaty banning the deployment of intermediate-ranged missiles was dead. Okay, and really, this is the Most High pulling away at the barriers in between this the U.S. and Russia going to war. All right, he's stripping away all these reasons not to. All right, and also putting the spirit in Russia, okay, to turn them back to that warlike Soviet Union spirit. Okay, so it says this is today, February 1st, Washington, the United States is suspending one of the last major nuclear arms control treaties with Russia after heated conversations between the two powers recently failed to resolve a long-running accusation that Moscow is violating the Reagan-era treaty. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo announced the decision on Friday as the Trump administration maintained that the Russian government has been unwilling to admit that a missile it had deployed near European borders violates the terms of the 1987 Intermediate Range Nuclear Force Treaty. All right, which Trump is saying in 180 days they're going to do away with that. It says the U.S. is going to pull out of that. Mr. Pompeo and his deputies have insisted that Moscow destroy the missile. Instead, the government of President Vladimir V. Putin of Russia counter-accused the United States of violating the treaty's terms because of the way in which it has deployed launchers for anti-ballistic missile systems in Europe. Countries must be held accountable when they break the rules, Mr. Pompeo told journalists at the State Department. Russia and see what it is that now we're in that era where anybody can get their hands on nuclear weapons. All right, and Russia has a whole arsenal of them. All right, and so does the U.S. So it's not on some, the U.S. is the only one, the major superpower, so whatever they say, people obey. No. All right, these nations, the Lord is putting the spirit in them not to back down to the U.S. anymore. All right. So it says Russia has jeopardized the United States' security interests, Mr. Pompeo said, and we can no longer be restricted by the treaty while Russia shamelessly violates it. See? So they're saying, you know what, we're just gonna do away with it completely, because if Russia is violating it, it's putting us at a disadvantage if we're trying to follow a treaty which they're not even following, so-called. Okay, and so they're like, you know what, to hell with that. We're also gonna do our own thing. It says, but while the United States has insisted Russia's actions sank the treaty, the Trump administration's real aim is to broaden its prohibitions. All right. Yeah, prohibitions to include China. It says, constrained by the treaty's provisions, the United States has been prevented from deploying new weapons to counter China's effort to cement a dominant position in the Western Pacific and keep American aircraft carriers at bay. China was still a small and unsophisticated military power in the mid-1980s and not a signatory to the treaty that was negotiated between the United States and a rapidly weakening Soviet Union. By contrast, much of Beijing's growing nuclear arsenal currently consists of missiles that fall into the distance ranges that are prohibited by the treaty that applies only to Russia and the United States. But here it is, the United States is worried about that, so they're trying to stretch it to where it affects China too. All right, even though China's not included in it. It says the issue is now whether the administration has a plan for what comes next, said Pranay Vadi, a fellow in the nuclear policy program at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace and former State Department official until 2017, who worked on nuclear arms control issues. There is no question that the Russians committed a violation, but it is not militarily significant because it doesn't change the balance of power in Europe. With the treaty on its last legs, the question is whether Mr. Pompeo's announcement will result in a flurry of last-minute negotiations with Moscow, which seems unlikely, or whether it will accelerate the Cold War-like behavior among the United States, Russia, and China, which are all key players in this World War III, and along with Iran and Israel. So it says, complicating that question is the American intelligence agencies warning this week that Russia and China are more aligned than at any point since the mid-1950s. The fate of the treaty has quickly become a test of the continuing struggle inside the Trump administration, and with its allies over how to handle an increasingly aggressive Russia. All right. And, propaganda is also a big part in it. All right. Between the countries that are planning to go to war or that are at war, propaganda is a big part. One side says one thing about the another, to try and justify means as to why they have to do certain things, but that's all included in it. It says Mr. Trump campaigned on remaking Washington's relationship with Moscow. The open investigation by the Justice Department's special counsel is, at its core, about whether he and his campaign aids promises to relieve sanctions and other impediments to Russia in return for financial or electoral benefits from Mr. Putin's government. It says, but Mr. Trump has surrounded himself in the White House with hawkish advisors, including John R. Bolton, the National Security Advisor, who has been a major critic of treaties that he believes impinge the United States' ability to counter new or rising foreign threats. The decision to leave the nuclear arms treaty took American allies by surprise. When the word of the decision first leaked out in October and was quickly confirmed by Mr. Trump. The North and America's allies are soon going to be America's foes, all right, pursuant to biblical prophecy. The North Atlantic Treaty Organization, the military alliance that was created to counter the Soviet threat 70 years ago, acknowledged that Russia had violated the INF Treaty and called on Moscow in December to return urgently to full and verifiable compliance. It says, but the alliance stopped short of agreeing that the United States should withdraw, declaring then that the Allies are firmly committed to the preservation of effective international arms control, disarmament, and non-proliferation. The announcement by Mr. Pompeo came just ahead of the expiration on Saturday of a 60-day deadline he gave Moscow to come into compliance with the treaty. He had no expectation that the Russians would heed his warning. It says Mr. Pompeo's formal announcement begins a 6-month clock that Trump administration officials believe will end with a full American withdrawal from the treaty starting on Saturday. The United States would be free to begin to test or deploy its own weapons. It is not clear whether that will happen. There are no weapons in the American arsenal that could be quickly deployed. That was the point of the treaty. It banned an entire category of weapons, land-based missiles with a range of 300 to 3,400 miles that both the United States and the Soviet Union had deployed in the 1980s and which at the time terrorized Europe. All right, but I mean, now there's basically nothing in the way, nothing stopping them from doing these things. So yeah, it is going to lead into an arms race. All right, but the main end all be all is going to be a world war. All right, the war of Armageddon, and it's not going to be with just these few countries. No, it's going to draw all these majority of these other nations in there. Okay. See if I get a precept. I think it's Zephaniah 3 and 8. This is Zephaniah chapter 3, verse 8. Therefore wait ye upon me, saith Yahweh, until the day that I rise up to the prey. For my determination is to gather the nations, that I may assemble the kingdoms, to pour upon them mine indignation, even all my fierce anger. For all the earth shall be devoured with the fire of my jealousy. All right, but like we all understand based on the scriptures, all right, the earth is going to abide forever. All right, so it doesn't mean the whole entire earth is going to be destroyed, but certain parts of it are going to be done away with, primarily America. All right, America is going to be a complete desert. It's just going to be destroyed. Okay, and other parts of the world too. All right, but the Lord said what? His determination is to gather the nations. All right, this is why this world war is going to be like a vortex that's going to pull in all these nations. All right, and ultimately they're going to be destroyed. All right. And America, man, forget it. It's over. Okay. So, this is just another step closer, all right, to prophecy being fulfilled. Okay, that's why, as prophets, man, we keep our eyes open. We stay on our watchtower and keep looking for these articles and filtering them through the scriptures. Okay, so, Lord willing, this is edifying to the elect. I want to give all praises to Yahweh, Hashem, Yahweh Shai, and Shalom.